Hi there, I'm Miss B. Hanley, and today we're talking about gamification.
Gamification is the use of game mechanics in other everyday situations. In education, it is the use of gameful learning experiences within the classroom to engage students.
So in my roughly 6 years of teaching, I've learned a lot about different teaching styles and different instructional practices and their effects on our students. On this channel, you've probably seen some of the research I've conducted to get my master's in education, as well as some research that has personally interested me. One of the more interesting trends in education in the last 10 years has been gamification and gameful learning experiences. In the past year or two, I myself have started researching gamification, gameful learning experiences in the classroom in the hopes that I could create a more engaging educational experience for my students. In my last research video, I did talk specifically about the blended classroom and how this past school year has been set up for in-person students and virtual students. Something else that I researched in this last semester, though, was gameful learning and gamification in this kind of environment. So I gamified my classroom. I created a unit in the second semester that allowed students to act as players, be assigned to teams, and compete against each other to win points and prizes. Each student was a player and had a certain amount of points that they were required to meet every week. They were also put into cohorts or teams, and the teams that received the most points at the end of the week received a prize. Basically, each week we covered a different topic, and there were a set of assignments that students could choose from to complete. They had to complete a minimum of 80 points during the week, which amounted to about 2 to 3 assignments. Each assignment did allow them to delve deeper into the topic and give them a sense of an overview of the concepts that we were talking about that week. During the class, I would go over a certain assignment to help students understand the material a little bit better, especially if they needed that little push to get the assignment in and submitted. Now, students did have the option to do more assignments and get more points. This year in particular was probably the hardest when it came to a mid-year switch. I had students leaving face-to-face, going to virtual, students leaving virtual, coming to face-to-face, and students being quarantined for up to 2 weeks. So I did have to do a lot of rearranging with the groups with the initial cohorts that I set up. But I did balance it out by allowing each group to have a goal. So if each team member completed their 80 points worth of assignments, they would reach their goal. And even if another team got more points than them, if that team didn't reach their goal, they would still not receive the prize. So it was based on their attainment of their goal and then the points that they achieved after that. Using game mechanics to drive incentive and motivation can only last for so long, and that's why I only did it for 1 unit. The subsequent unit after this, I discontinued the game and went on to a different piece of research, which I'm going to talk about in a second. There were a lot of positives that came out of this, though, particularly students that had been not as involved or not as engaged in previous classes found themselves more incentivized to do work, and I did find them more engaged in certain aspects of the class, especially when I would go over assignments with the whole class or even allowed them to work with their groups. I found that when students were able to work with their groups or even assigned to work with their groups, they were much more willing to do the work because they were able to talk to people, which shockingly they had wanted. Whereas before, in a whole class Zoom call, most students did not feel willing to raise their hand or speak out or even type in the chat. When I allowed students to go into breakout rooms that I would check in through periodically, students were typing, talking, and engaging with their peers in various ways about the assignment. I think that piece of the unit itself, while it isn't necessarily a huge game mechanic, but you could argue that it is, was an integral piece to making this entire unit work. And I think that some of them really did connect with each other and build relationships that lasted a little bit longer than the game itself. So that was kind of what I was hoping for with that too. I'm really glad that that happened. I was very aware of my students who were English language learners who may have needed help from a student who was familiar with their language. So putting them together in groups was really helpful because it allowed conversation to happen and relationships to be built. Is the biggest complaint is I did have a lot of really good leaders in my virtual classes, but I think that because they were really engaged and wanted it to work out, that they were put down when there were students that were not being a part of the group and doing their part. I kind of hoped that the other group members might kind of rally around that person and encourage them. There's only so much you want to put forth. You're talking to a person who's not paying attention to you. This face-to-face group did have a hard time connecting. I think this also was due to a lot of my leaders in the classroom being absent for long stretches of time, being quarantined. A lot of the students that I had hoped to engage the other students and kind of bring them in were not there. I'm not sure what I could add into that situation that would help. I don't know. I'm not sure what I need to do. If you have a suggestion, let me know. Okay, let's get into some more gameful learning examples. The first is an escape room. An escape room is not at all a new concept and has been around for a long time. I created an escape room in my classroom that allowed students to solve puzzles and to create a passcode to get them to leave the room. The shortest time, I believe, was 31 minutes and the longest time was 53. So I definitely recommend at least plan out a timeline that you have if you do something like this. You want to gauge about how long it's going to take students to complete the puzzle or solve the mystery. I didn't take any pictures of students completing the escape room because I forgot. But I do have some pictures of the clues that I gave the students as well as the slides that I gave the virtual students. That's right, I did try to include virtual students in this escape room scenario. It was a lot harder because I felt like I needed to create almost two separate games, one for the in-person students and one for the online students, which has pretty much been my entire school year. The shortest time for the entire escape room was because they got help from the eSchool students. The one class that took the longest got zero help from eSchool students. So I do think that the eSchool students did have a role to play, especially since I gave the shortest time students a prize. The other thing about the escape room is that I got to play a character in this gameful learning experience. There has to be a reason for the students to come to the teacher to gain information or get help with something. The teacher cannot be just absent. Getting some feedback about this was really positive. Students seemed really excited and happy, even if they didn't get the shortest time. They did really enjoy being able to walk around the room and figure out puzzles and unlock things. And I think that they also really enjoyed just being able to kind of get up out of their seat and do something different than the worksheet or lecture. The last example I have is a murder mystery lesson, and this is one that I actually took offline and adapted for my classroom. I didn't do it exactly the way that they instructed you in the lesson I downloaded. I changed a couple of things and just to create more intrigue and more puzzles and more interest. There are technically, I think, two ways you can play this. With a younger group or even a more lively interactive group, you can definitely do acting out the characters, where each student is given a character at this murder mystery party to portray, and then interacting with each other as their characters to find out more information about the mystery. However, I had older students who were not as lively, especially at 7 a.m., so I gave them the option to portray the characters or act as cold case investigators. They preferred the cold case investigators theme a little bit more, and they also got really into it, especially trying to figure out who had the murderer, who had the person who did it. They used a lot of critical thinking skills. They used a lot of communication skills. It is sort of a game, but they are using a lot of skills that they would need in a real life environment. So Had a positive response on this one as well, probably about the same as the escape room. One of the critiques I got was that the murder was too obvious. It did not take the full class period like I thought it would. It took about, I'd say, 30 to 45 minutes, but you can create it longer, especially if you do the portrayal of the characters or add more clues or more people. Okay, at the end of all of these examples, I just want to say that there was a lot of work involved in creating them and building them and making them come alive in my classroom. With the unit gamification and game mechanics, that wasn't as hard because I had a lot of content that I could fill in through Khan Academy and online resources and from previous units to help build students' knowledge. The game mechanics may have been a little tricky to keep up with, but if I had a better computerized system, I think I would have overcome that obstacle very easily. I will say it wasn't as much work as creating the escape room or the murder mystery. Those were two very high amount of prep work. Creating the clues, setting up the classroom, printing out everything so that the students can have to see, putting stuff up on the board. It was a lot more work than going over a traditional schedule of assignments each week. I think that if you were to do a full unit like that, it would take a lot more planning and a lot more preparation time than most teachers are probably willing to put in. That being said, there are so many teachers out there that have already created gameful learning experiences through escape rooms, murder mysteries, and they've posted it online to be bought by other teachers or other educators or parents. And some of them are online for free. It's really, really easy to find resources from other teachers who have already built unit plans and materials that you can adapt or work off of. Compared to traditional teaching techniques, these kind of go hand in hand. Other teaching techniques that I've seen, that I've talked about probably on this channel, that I plan to talk about on this channel in the future, have a lot of these elements, these same gamification, game mechanic elements that increase student engagement and make the classroom a more interesting place to be and a more learning focused place. I definitely think there's a huge opportunity with these kind of gameful learning experiences to give students a little bit more engagement in their day, especially when it comes to doing stuff that they're not necessarily interested in doing, like reading, writing, solving math problems. If you can create an engaging experience that doesn't make it feel like you're at school, I think it can trick them into thinking that learning is fun. What a concept. As a gamer, I've seen the benefit that games have on my life and my learning. And I want students to feel that kind of joy and engagement when they have a learning experience as well. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, please comment down below. Let me know your thoughts. I'm very passionate about games and gameful learning experiences, so I'm pretty biased, but maybe you have a different perspective. I would love to hear it. I want to give a big shout out to all my students from last year who helped me complete these experiments in my classroom. You all are amazing, and I was the luckiest teacher in the world last year to be able to work with so many bright young minds. So I cannot wait to see the success that you have in the future. If you'd like to see more from me and my classroom, you can follow the links in the description. I hope you have a fabulous day, and I'll see you in class. Bye!